Hello, and welcome back to yet another episode of SAF Podcast. And it's really a joy to be back again after 2 weeks with the cool winter coming in slowly creeping in. So that you can see that my hoodie is in because this part of India it's pretty cold. But I'm glad that we could join in. And Jacob, how's it over there?
Oh yeah, it's the Diwali time rain came a week earlier, and so this part of India, the Bangalore side is also pretty cold. I mean, the thing about Bangalore is the weather is so good, right? That's what everyone has to say about the weather. So the weather has been
That's
pleasant and fun to live in as always. So things all going well.
Yeah, when I was there during the conference, I really enjoyed the weather.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, let's just quickly dive into what we have today. And as most of our audience, you know that we've been following the series on natural theology. And in the past couple of weeks, we've been looking at the Kalam cosmological argument, different objections against it. We saw in the previous episode the scientific proof to the premise 2. The episode before that, we saw the philosophical proof to premise 2, how the universe cannot exist infinitely. So for the universe to exist today, there has to be a cause. Without that, it is impossible. Now, continuing on the same lines, today we'll be talking about, again, the Kalam cosmological argument only. And, since we had the premise 1 and premise 2, therefore, there's a cause for the universe, right? So, what is this cause? Is it like the quantum gravity or quantum tunneling, or what is it exactly?
Right. So what we have to figure out here is, so we know that the universe is the effect, and we have to figure out what is the nature of the first cause. And the way to proceed with this is we do what is called a conceptual analysis of the conclusion of the argument. So the conclusion of the argument says that the universe has a cause, right? Now we're going to take that and we're going to try and analyze and see what could be the nature of this cause, because we want to figure out what could be this cause. Because like you said, it could be quantum gravity effects. Is that the cause? Is it quantum tunneling? Is it something else? Maybe it could be some unknown laws of physics that is happening in the Planck era at the most initial starting point of the universe. So we have to analyze the cause to see what is happening here. And the thing to keep in mind is that this analysis is disconnected from the Kalam, in the sense that if we do the analysis and we come to say, let's assume that we come to say the cause is some quantum particle, just for an assumption. That is a result of the analysis we are doing. So if someone has an issue with the nature of the cause, if someone says, hey, that quantum particle cannot be the cause of the universe, they can't blame that on the Kalam. The Kalam cosmological argument says that the universe has a cause, and the argument stops there. So any objection that you have towards the argument has to be dealt within the argument itself. And if there is an issue with what we identify to be the cause of the universe, that has to be dealt separately. So that distinction has to be kept in mind before we move forward.
Okay. All right. Some of us, we know about the 4 horsemen of new atheism, right? So one of them is Daniel Dennett. He's a renowned atheist. Now, he puts it in this way. He says that what does need its origin explained is the concrete universe itself. And, as Hume, long ago, he asked that why not stop at the material world? It does perform a version of the ultimate bootstrapping trick. So it creates itself ex nihilo, which we had explained in the previous episodes. Now, or at any rate, something that is well nigh indistinguishable from nothing at all. So this is what Daniel Dennett said in his quote. So could we suggest that the universe caused itself?
Yeah. Now, the idea of a universe creating itself is self-creation. And it's quite absurd to, as we think about what self-creation could entail. So the Christian theologian Thomas Aquinas, back in his time, he had objected to the idea of self-creation. And at that time, he was objecting along the lines of the prevailing thought. The prevailing thought at that time was that the universe is eternally existing. But when we come to realize that the universe had a beginning, then the idea of self-creation is even more absurd, right? Because the universe must exist to create itself. And so what we realize is that this suggestion from Dennett is far out there to posit that the universe could have created itself. Because to create the universe must already be there. So then why does the universe need to create itself if the universe is already there? So the moment you just simply use some simple common sense to think about it, you realize that it is massively absurd. Now, interesting thing to keep in mind is that because we know that the created thing is the universe, we know that the creator cannot be the universe. So here what we're seeing is that knowing about the nature of the effect tells us about the nature of the cause, right? That is what is happening at play here.
Yeah. So what can we know about the nature of the universe? Like we know that the universe consists of space, time, matter, information. And in the recent episodes, we even got to know that the universe had a beginning in the recent past and it did not exist eternally.
Right. So what we see is that when we analyze the effect, which is the universe, and as you mentioned, you mentioned these details about the universe. Okay, so when we analyze the effect, which is the universe, it tells us that the cause of the universe, the cause that brought this effect universe into existence, the cause must be spaceless, timeless, changeless, immaterial, beginningless, uncaused, and extremely powerful and personal. Okay, so this is what we're going to dive into. We're going to try and figure out, is this really the nature of the cause, how to come to it, and so on and so forth. Okay. So right now I can feel that you have some questions in mind. So we'll take it step by step from here.
So spaceless, I guess it's because the universe comprises of space and space cannot create itself. Is that so?
Yes.
Or
right? That is the reason, right? Okay. So when we say the universe is existing and universe is made up of the space-time fabric, space cannot create itself. So whatever created space must be beyond space. As simple as that. So that part is clear. Okay. So now we know that because the universe comprises of space, the cause must be spaceless. All right. Next one. What do we have next?
Next is timeless.
Right. Same logic. So what we're going to do is when we analyze the effect, which is the universe, we find out the nature of the cause. So what we realize is, okay, and this is what we're going to look in the remainder of the episode, that the nature of the cause of the universe must be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, changeless, beginningless, uncaused, personal, and immensely powerful. Now, right now, as we mentioned this, when we think about the universe, right, the universe comprises of space. Okay, so then we realize, okay, if the universe is made up of space, then whatever created space cannot be restricted within space or could not be limited within space. It would have to be spaceless. Right. If the universe comprises of material, whatever created material should be immaterial. So the cause of the universe must be immaterial in that sense. And the same logic would apply to it being timeless. If the cause of the universe created time, and we looked in the previous episode about Stephen Hawking himself and others admitting that time itself must have a beginning. And when we realize that the universe had time at its beginning, like time began with the universe, then whatever created or whatever brought time into existence itself cannot be restricted within time. So that cause should be timeless. And what we also realize is that if the cause is timeless, right? If the cause is timeless, then there cannot be changes in that cause. Because if the cause of the universe in this one particular state and a change happens in the nature of the cause, then you can point out to before and after, because you have a demarcation point. Right? That change becomes an indication and you are able to distinguish between before the change happened and after the change happened. So you have time getting into the scene. But if the cause of the universe is timeless, then there cannot be any change. And if the cause of the universe, if the cause is changeless, then it cannot be made up of material, because material is constantly changing. Every matter that we see around is undergoing fundamental changes. It's undergoing changes in its nature. It's not the same way that was before. So there is constant change happening in that object, in that material construct. So we see that by understanding the effect, the universe, we see that the cause of the universe must be spaceless, timeless, and if timeless, it should be changeless, and if changeless, it should be immaterial as well. So we've gotten to these many points. And in the preceding episodes, we talked about how we cannot have the line of causation, like one thing causing another, that thing being caused by another, and so on and so on and so forth. We realize how that line of causation cannot keep going back on and on and on and on. We show that regression into the past, that regression that goes on infinite, cannot exist. So we see that the cause of the universe must be, under that examination, uncaused and beginningless. And because if it is timeless, then again, that applies to its beginningless nature as well. Because else you could say before it began, after it began, and all those distinctions, and then it won't be changeless because there is beginning to itself, and so on and so forth. So all of these criteria apply back and forth to each other, and we get to the point where we say the cause of the universe must be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, changeless, beginningless, and uncaused. And then what we also see is that the universe comprises the four forces of nature, which is the strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, electromagnetic force, and gravitational force. These are the most powerful natural forces within the universe. So whatever brought these forces into existence and was the cause behind events like as asymmetry breaking and so on and so forth, where the unified forces broke into these four distinct forces over the course of time. Whatever brought these forces into existence must be immensely powerful. Because consider how powerful gravity is. Consider how powerful the electromagnetic and nuclear forces are. So whatever brought these forces into existence must be immensely powerful. So as a recap, are you following along, Piyush? You seeing how all of these connect to each other? Right. So
makes total sense.
The final, yes. So the final thing that is left there is the question about why should the cause of the universe be personal? And there are three reasons to point to the fact to say that the cause of the universe must be personal. And the first one is brought forward by Richard Swinburne, who is one of the most renowned English philosophers of our time, and quite arguably of the century even. So Richard Swinburne says that events have two explanations, or there are two explanations for the causes. One is a scientific explanation, and the other one is a personal explanation. So let me use an example from our friend Justin Brierley. In one of his reels, he shows about a cake, right? And he says that when you try to explain the cake, okay, you can say stuff like, how did this cake come to be? What caused this cake? It is the heating of the oven and the components and the batter reacting of so manner. And you can explain the causes behind the cake being formed and say, right, here's an explanation. Here is a scientific explanation of what has happened in the causal nature of that cake. In the same way, if you talk about that famous example of putting a kettle to boil, like putting water in a kettle and putting it to boil. If you ask, why is the water boiling? You can say the same scientific explanation. There's heat transmitting to the kettle, reaction, so on and so forth. Water is boiling, turns into vapor, steam, yada, yada, yada. So we've got a scientific explanation. A personal explanation of what is happening here would be that the person baked the cake for a birthday or just for an evening snack. That would be the personal explanation. And similarly, the personal explanation for someone boiling water would be to make tea, coffee, and so on and so forth, or just to have hot water like I have with me. So that would be the two explanations that events can have. And Richard Swinburne says that because we're talking about the beginning of the universe, when the forces of nature, all that we use science to detect and understand, all that comes under the realm of science, because we're talking about an instance where all of this is coming to existence for the very first time, you cannot have a scientific explanation there. You can only have a personal explanation. And that means that the cause of the universe must be a mind. A mind can give a personal explanation. And because of the two explanation that can be there, because scientific explanation is ruled out, the only remaining explanation for the beginning of the universe is a personal one. And a personal explanation can only be given by a mind. So that is one argument that Richard Swinburne puts forward. The other reason to think that the cause of the universe could be a mind is that philosophers point out that there are two entities. Objects would be a very simplified way of saying it, but there are two things that would be an even the more simplified and almost misleading way of saying it. But there are two entities that satisfy the condition of being timeless and immaterial. And they say one is abstract objects, like numbers. Numbers are abstract objects. The other one is a mind. Now, numbers don't cause anything. That is one of the characteristics of being abstract object. They're just there. They don't do anything. They don't cause anything, and they do not bring about any effect, and so on and so forth. So, of the two entities that meet our criteria to be timeless and immaterial, one is numbers, but they can't do anything. The other entity that philosophers point out is a mind. Mind can be timeless and immaterial. So, of these two viable alternatives, numbers, abstract objects are all ruled out because they cannot cause anything. So, the only survivor is a mind. And so, that is the second reason to think that the mind is the cause of the universe.
Yeah.
Now, more than these two reasoning, the one that strikes me the most interesting or most convincing is the third reason. So, what we see with the universe is, right now we saw with the cause of the universe, it is timeless, immaterial, beginningless, uncaused, and so on and so forth. So we realize that the cause of the universe is eternal, but the effect, the universe itself, is not eternal. So the cause is there without change. As we saw, the cause of the universe is changeless, timeless, immaterial, all that stuff. So the cause of the universe is eternal and without change, but then the effect is not eternal. Now, there are two common types of how cause and effect relate to each other. One is a state situation, right? The other is an event situation. So, state is when we say I'm in a happy state, right? It's about something about constancy. Event is something that happens instantly. So, just keep that in mind when we explore the state and event difference. What am I talking about here? We know that when we put ice on water, it floats. Okay, so we can point out that the density difference or the surface tension, whatever that's technically there, that property is the cause, and the effect is ice floating on water. So we have identified a cause, and we have identified an effect. Now this is an example of a state situation, where the cause is a state and the effect is also a state. So the cause here is the surface tension, density difference between ice and water. And the effect is ice floating on water. And because it is a state, as long as the state holds, as long as the density difference and the surface tension, physics and all of that as long as all of those properties hold, the ice will always float on top of water. A similar example would be is if there is a room where the temperature is less than 0 degrees Celsius, right? Now that means water is going to freeze. So as long as the temperature is less than 0 degrees Celsius, any water around that area or within that room would be ice. So you have a state. The temperature of the room is less than 0 degrees Celsius. The effect is also a state. Water in that room is always ice. So that state is holding out that effect to be also another state. Temperature is always less than 0. The effect, water, is always in ice form. So you don't see any changes happening there. Now the other form of cause and effect relationship is an event situation. So if I take a stone and throw at a window, when the stone hits the window, the cause, okay, that is the cause, the stone hitting the window. The event is the glass breaking. So you see how they are not spread out over time or constant as the state situation, right? It is happening at that specific instance. So at that instance, T0 or T1, whatever you want to call it, at that instance T0, the rock hits the window, and when that happens, the glass breaks. Now these are how we observe cause and effect to function in the world. You have state situations, or you have event situation. What we find with the case of the universe is that the cause is eternal, but the effect is not. Okay, so how can this cause be changeless and always existent in whatever state it is? But the effect of that cause is not eternal. It is not always there. So it would be similar to saying that the temperature in the room changed at some point. But if the temperature in the room is changeless, then that is always the case it has been. So why isn't water which was in that room always ice? If the temperature in the room has always been less than 0, why is in water in that room always ice? What we should observe is that the water in the room should have always been ice because the temperature was always less than 0. This is the challenge when we look at the cause of the universe. The cause of the universe is changeless. There's nothing changing. It's timeless and beginningless and uncaused. So an eternal, changeless cause of the universe. But the effect, the universe came into existence only a couple of billion years ago and has not been eternal. The only explanation is that the cause is a mind, and hence the cause can actualize the eternal plan it had without bringing about any change in its nature and thereby bring the universe into effect. So what that would mean is that if the cause is a mind, then the mind could have decided eternally, always, that it would want to bring the universe into effect. So there is no change in the nature of the mind, right? It is not as if instantly at some point it thinks, oh, I didn't want to create the universe, now let me create the universe, or anything of that sort. The mind can have that eternal decision to create the universe, and at a particular point instance, it actualizes that desire and creates the universe. A mind is the only thing that can satisfy this criteria. A mind is the only thing that can solve this problem where the cause of the universe is a state, but the effect is an event which just came to existence a finite time in the past. And what that would mean is that the cause has been static, the cause was not changing, the cause was a state, and then it actualized its will to create the universe. And there we have the first moment in time, and so on and so forth. So this would mean that the cause is a mind with the freedom to act at will. And this shows us what the nature of the cause should be. Now we have gone through very slowly through it. We've seen that the cause of the universe, when we analyze the nature of the universe, when we analyze the nature of the effect, shows us what the nature of the cause of the universe should be. Therefore, the cause of the universe must be timeless, spaceless, changeless, immaterial, beginningless, uncaused, unimaginably powerful, and a personal cause. Now, one final thing to add before we get to the last bit is, what could this cause of the universe be? You can call it anything you want. You can call it a computer, you can call it a supercomputer, and so on and so forth. But doesn't our understanding of our conceptualization of who God is, isn't that the best fit to this understanding? Doesn't that make the most sense to understand the cause of this universe? And to a Christian, there are even more arguments that connect to this transcendent, spaceless, timeless, immaterial, unimaginably powerful personal cause of the universe, that connect it from different arguments to show that we're still talking about one single cause that caused the universe, that caused moral laws, that caused the complexities and fine-tuning of the planet, and so on and so forth. And then to a Christian, he comes down to the point where he stops and asks, what explains the empty tomb of Jesus of Nazareth? And there too we see that the best explanation is something or someone interfering into the natural world and doing something that requires unimaginable power to defeat death and bring life back. So for a Christian, this is one of the first building blocks of building a cumulative and additional, piece by piece, a cumulative case for a creator, the case for a cause behind the universe, the case for God. Now, I think we may have time to just take one quick objection that some may have before we wrap up this episode. Have you got anything for me?
Yes. I was just wondering, like right now we're talking about the cause, right? So when we use the word cause, it is about, transforming something, some pre-existing thing into something, or reforming it or reshaping it into something else, right? For example, a wood to table or a wood to chair. But then over here, like when we talk about cause in the Kalam cosmological argument, so we say that causing something from nothing. So won't that be a logical fallacy, using cause in one way and then in a different way later?
Yeah, it is one of the most common and frequent objections raised to the Kalam. And so the response is that when we use the word cause in the argument, we're talking about something that can bring about an effect. Now, that is the core point of the causal relationship, cause effect thing that we are applying here. That is the understanding that we are plugging into the Kalam cosmological argument. Cause is something that can bring about an effect. Now, if it uses pre-existing material or not is irrelevant. Is it bringing about an effect? Then that is the cause. That is all that we're talking about. And also when we talk about creatio ex nihilo, or creation out of nothing, when we talk about the fact that the cause of the universe has created the universe out of nothing, all of that comes to its core. It comes to its most brute form, in its most foundational form, when we analyze the nature of the effect, when we analyze the nature of the universe. That is when we come to the realization, we say, oh, the universe must have come from nothing. And also when an atheist denies premise 1, like premise 1 says that everything that begins to exist has a cause. When they deny it, they are arguing for a sense of creatio ex nihilo, that things could come out of nothing, by nothing, from nothing, of nothing. A complete creatio ex nihilo. They are denying every form of cause. So I think creatio ex nihilo should trouble them more than should trouble a Christian or the theist who puts forward the Kalam cosmological argument. So 2 responses, and I'll just quickly remind it again. When we use the word cause in the Kalam, we're talking about something that can bring about an effect. Now, if it transforms or reshapes existing matter or not, is not the point of the argument. It is not how we use the term cause. It's bring about an effect, then it is a cause. We say creatio ex nihilo and all of that, specifically when we realize that the effect, the universe, is space, time and matter. And therefore that prompts us to say, therefore the cause of the universe must have been spaceless, timeless and immaterial, and should have brought this universe out of literal nothingness. There shouldn't be any space, time or matter pre-existing to create space, time or matter. That is the reason that we take with this.
Yeah, okay. So like this was just one of the objection against the Kalam cosmological arguments. There are plenty of more objections, and here's the exciting part. In the next 2 episodes, we'll be having a couple of guests come over on SAFT podcast, and we'll be discussing about some of the common objections which are there, and we'll talk about another interesting question, which is like, is time travel possible? It is something which comes across all of our minds. We've watched it on cartoon, on movies, but in reality, is it possible? And if it does, then what does it do to the Kalam cosmological argument? So these are some of the questions which will be handled in the upcoming episodes. And for that, what you need to do is stay tuned, follow us on our social media pages so that you'll be updated on what's coming up next. And we're extremely sorry that we crossed our 20 minutes mark, but I'm sure that you all are gracious enough to bear with us. So that's it from this episode, and we'll see you in the next one. Till then, stay safe and take care.